in this session, we'll understand what is procurement, indirect versus direct procurement, and what are the different solutions that are offered by Ariba. Then we'll understand what is the source to pay cycle. Idris, I believe you will have a good understanding of all these areas as you have
Oh,
already.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
this is the
yeah,
bullet point. Very good.
yeah. Okay. So let's understand what is procurement. Okay. So procurement, I'll just read through this, then we'll understand in depth. Okay. So procurement is a business function responsible for securing all the goods and services needed by an organization. Okay. As so procurement is nothing but procuring or purchasing the goods and services needed by an organization. Now let's take example of an car manufacturing organization. Okay, so to manufacture cars, what all are the items that we need to procure, and what are all the services that we need to run the car manufacturing organization? All these fall under procurement. Now, if we try to understand the broader spectrum of procurement, so we'll have uh, areas like identifying the supplier, which comes under sourcing. Then we'll have negotiating the contract with the suppliers, that comes under contract. Then placing the orders with the uh, approved suppliers, and then finally paying for the goods and services. So all this comes under procurement. It's just like purchasing. You purchase something for your home or for yourself as well, right? So it is something like purchasing, but on a very big scale, on a larger scale for an organization. Okay, so that is procurement. Now procurement is of two types. One is direct procurement and the other one is indirect procurement. So let's understand what is direct and what is indirect procurement. So procuring anything that directly supports the production of the goods of a company that sells. Okay, let's take the example of a car manufacturing car. Let's stick with that example and then try to understand what is direct procurement. So what are all the equipment that is needed to buy or to manufacture a car? So we need the gear knob, we need the steering wheel, we need the metal parts, we'll need the tires, we'll need the horn, we'll need the wiring, we need the boards, we need the touch screen, right? We need all these equipment to manufacture a car, correct? So procuring all these items falls under direct procurement because all these are directly related to the end product of a company, right? So direct procurement is nothing but any procurement activity that is directly involved in the manufacturing or in the preparation of the end product of a company which it sells it to its customer. That is called procurement, direct procurement. Then moving on to indirect procurement. So indirect procurement, is something which is used to run the organization on a daily basis. Okay, but that does not directly involve in the production of the finished good. That is called indirect procurement. So to run the car manufacturing company, we'll need the laptops, we need office supplies, we need office space, we need services from different vendors, like we have to purchase water and other stuff, right, to run the organization. So all these goods and services are directly not linked to the manufacturing of the car, but they help in running the organization, right? So that is why it is called indirect procurement, right? Non-inventory. So direct, so that is in direct procurement and indirect procurement. So I'll just summarize it again. So direct procurement is something, any procurement activity which directly is involved in the finished in the which is directly involved in producing or manufacturing the finished good. That is called direct procurement. Whereas indirect procurement is something which is not directly involved in the production or manufacture of a finished good, but is necessary to run the organization on a day-to-day basis. That is called indirect procurement. So I'll give some more information, to explain direct procurement. So, so when we are manufacturing a car, so as I said, we need various raw materials to manufacture the car, right? So the companies which manufacture the car, they don't buy these raw materials from a single supplier. So they depend on multiple suppliers to buy these raw materials. Let's consider the metal which is required to manufacture the car. Okay, so what generally a company does is they go into the market, do analysis of the various suppliers that supply that metal sheet. Okay, then they shortlist, let's say 10 suppliers out of 50 suppliers. uh, then they invite those suppliers for RFP. Then, so where we are asking the suppliers for basic information about the price. Then out of those 10 suppliers, they uh, finalize about, let's say, 5 suppliers. Then they conduct sort of an auction among those 5 suppliers. Whoever gives the best price, companies usually tend to go with them. And of course, price is not the only factor here. So they rely on multiple factors like quality, cost, the delivery of the product. All these factors are considered before finalizing 2 or 3 suppliers. Okay. So likewise, any raw material that they are procuring from a supplier, they will not rely on a single supplier, because that could be risky, right? If any supplier, if they are relying on a single supplier, something happens in their production unit of the supplier, they will not be able to supply the goods to the uh, uh, car manufacturing company, right? So that's the reason companies tend to rely on multiple suppliers to procure these raw materials from different vendors to manufacture the car, right? So all these raw materials are involved in the production of the car. So that's why it is called direct procurement. Okay. So this car is what is actually the company going to sell to the customers, right? So that is how the company is generating the revenue. Understood? Okay. Take that as a no. So direct procurement is something which is involved in the procurement of raw materials of a finished article which a company is going to sell it to its customer. Okay. Now that is about direct procurement. Let's deep dive into indirect procurement. Now, so we understood what is direct procurement. So of course, so we manufacture the cars, but to manufacture a car, it's not just the raw materials to produce the car, right? So we need to have other uh, goods and services that we need to procure from various suppliers to run the organization. So manufacturing unit is one aspect of the car manufacturing company. So there will be employees who are involved in the sales, who are involved in the IT department, who are involved in the design of the car. So all these employees need to sit in a workplace, work together. Then so to work, they need various items, like for example, laptops. Laptops is a very key component for any organization, but that is directly not related in the manufacturing of the car. but it helps in running the day-to-day operations of the car. So that's why laptop falls under indirect procurement. So likewise, we'll need various office supplies, right? We might need the office desk, we need the chairs, we need the water, we need pencil, we need pen, we need notebooks. All these are helping in running the organization. So that's why they fall under indirect procurement. Any questions here?
No, sir. Understood. No.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now that we understood what is direct and indirect procurement, let's see what are the different solutions that are offered by Ariba. Now, where does Ariba fit in the world of procurement? Is it direct procurement or indirect procurement? So Ariba caters to indirect procurement. Okay. So Ariba application is mainly used for indirect procurement activities. Okay. So direct procurement is mainly done using a ERP system. Okay. Uh, so indirect procurement is the area which Ariba focuses mainly on. Okay. So it is not direct procurement, it is indirect procurement that Ariba mainly focuses on. There is one particular solution which supports direct procurement, but it is not entirely relied on Ariba. Okay. So most of the solutions that Ariba offers are related to indirect procurement. Okay. So that means Ariba helps in procuring the goods and services which are required to run an organization on a day-to-day basis. Okay. Clear? Okay. So just to let you know, so the procurement activities of any given company, majority of that is going to be direct procurement. Uh, the let's say it would be 70% direct procurement and 30% would be indirect procurement. Okay, just a stat that will help you. Okay. Okay. Now let's see what are the different solutions that are offered by SAP Ariba. So we have SAP Ariba sourcing, SAP Ariba contracts, SAP Ariba SLP, SAP Ariba buying and invoicing, SAP Ariba buying. So before we understand brief about these solutions, I'll give you a brief history about Ariba. Okay. Now Ariba was started in the year 1996 as an independent organization. Okay. So it was created with the main goal that there need to be transparency in the area of procurement. So back in those days, procurement was a very rigorous activity and very uh, manual uh, activity. Okay, so there were a lot of paperwork that was involved in procurement. So that's when some guys, understood the benefit of bringing procurement onto a digital platform, and they came up with the Ariba application back in 1996. Okay, so then in 1999 they went public. Okay, so when I say public, so they were listed on the stock exchange. Okay, so and in 2012 Ariba was acquired by SAP. So I believe most of you guys know what is SAP. So SAP is a ERP system, which is a German-based company. So SAP bought the Ariba application in 2012. Okay, for $4.3 billion. Okay, so that's a brief history about Ariba. Okay, so since then SAP has made a lot of changes to the Ariba application. So it is now a cloud-based solution. So when I say cloud-based solution, you need not install any software on your laptop or on your desktop. So there will be a URL like Gmail. You can access the Ariba application using that URL. You'll just log in with the user ID and a password. Okay, like you log into your Gmail account. Okay, So once you log in, you can see the various screens of Ariba. That's how Ariba works. It's a cloud-based solution. You need not install it on your desktop or on your laptop. Okay. Any questions? Cool. Now, so these are the different solutions so that Ariba offers. Ariba sourcing, contracts, SLP. SLP is nothing but supplier life cycle management. Ariba buying and invoicing, Ariba buying. So there are other solutions as well: commerce automation, supply chain collaboration. So those are mainly, as I said, are related to sort of direct procurement. We will not be covering them. Most, we will be covering these areas of Ariba. Okay, sourcing, contracts, SLP, buying and invoicing, and buying. Of course, we'll touch upon the topic of integration as well. Okay. Okay. Now, with that understanding, let's try to understand what is source to pay. Okay. What are the different phases of source to pay? Okay. So we have sourcing, contract management, ordering, and then the payment. So what is sourcing? So as the word indicates, sourcing means identifying the source of the materials or the services. So what are the different activities that are performed in sourcing? Okay, let me just give you some high level about sourcing. Okay, sourcing is identifying the source for the goods or services. Okay, now, so here, as I said, we'll stick to indirect procurement because Ariba applications support indirect procurement. Okay, Ariba caters to indirect procurement. Okay, now, so sourcing is identifying the source for the goods or the services. So, as I said initially, now let's continue with the car manufacturing example. Okay, now let's say the manufacturing company needs 100 laptops. Okay, so this is the we can say the requirement of the car manufacturing company. Okay, so they need 100 laptops. Now, to buy 100 laptops, what generally a company does is they go into the market, do a market analysis, as I mentioned here. So they do a market analysis initially to understand who are all the suppliers who supply the laptops. Okay, then then uh, they you know so let's say they identify 50 suppliers. Okay, 50 suppliers who supply laptops. Okay, so generally what they do is they create an RFI. Okay, RFI is nothing but request for information. Okay, so they they sort of invite these 50 suppliers and they create some basic questionnaire. Okay, like to understand the nature of the supplier. They'll have, when you are buying for a big organization, they have certain standards, right? And of course laptop comes in different configurations, right? So to understand if these suppliers can meet the buyer's requirement. Buyer is nothing but the buying organization. Okay, supplier is nothing but the company which supplies the goods or services to the buyer. Okay, so initially they sort of create an request for information. Okay, with a basic set of questions. Okay, to understand more about the suppliers. Okay, so based on this request for information, the suppliers respond respond to the RFI. Okay. Now, we can grade the responses from the suppliers. Okay. So, as I said, so I create a basic set of questions and I send it to the 50 suppliers. And based on the responses of the suppliers, I shortlist. Okay. As a buyer, I shortlist the suppliers for RFP. Okay. So, what is RFP now? Now, let's say based on the responses from the 50 suppliers, I have identified 20 suppliers. Okay. 20 suppliers for RFP. What is RFP? RFP is nothing for request for price. Okay. So RFI is request for information. Here I'm not talking about the price, okay, of the goods. I'm just asking for more information from the suppliers in the RFI phase. Okay. But in the RFP phase, I'm talking about the price. So I want to understand from these 20 suppliers, what is the price that they can offer me for a given laptop. Okay. Any questions
So,
here?
so RFP is something different than RFQ because I see an SAP RFQ request for quote.
Yeah. So RFP, RFQ, we can use them interchangeably. Idris.
Okay,
So RFQ is nothing but request for quotation. So
right.
again, here RFP is request for price. So nothing but the same. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Hello.
I'm okay. Yeah, good.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. So request for price or request for quotation. Now, so now once I have published the RFQ, the suppliers respond with their quotation, right? Suppliers respond with their quotations. Okay. Now, again, so based on the quotations, I again from this pool of 20 suppliers, I will shortlist, let's say, 5 suppliers. Okay. So I have shortlisted 5 suppliers. Now, then I conduct an auction among the 5 suppliers. Okay. So I have started with 50 suppliers. I have conducted a request for information. I have shortlisted based on the responses from the suppliers. I have shortlisted 20 suppliers. Then I've created an RFP or an RFQ, request for quotation or request for price. Based on the responses or their quotations, I have shortlisted 5 suppliers. Now, then I conduct an auction among the 5 suppliers. I believe most of you know what is an auction, right? Auction is nothing but where we tend to get the best quotation from the suppliers. It's like a competitive event among the suppliers, right? So each of them compete against themselves, against the other suppliers, to provide the best price for the laptop. Okay. Now, based on the uh, responses of the suppliers in this auction event, I will finally suppliers participate in the auction. Okay. Now, based on the responses, I will finally or finalize, I will say finalize 3 suppliers. Okay, 3 suppliers to supply the laptops. Okay, so this is how generally organizations identify the suppliers for their goods or services. So this is called sourcing. Okay, so we have started with an RFI. Next, we went for an RFP, RFQ. Then we created an auction event. Then, based on the responses in the auction, I finalized 3 suppliers. Okay, we started with 50 and ended or finalized 3 suppliers. So it can be more or it can be less. Okay, it depends on the requirement of the company. Okay, so I'm just giving you an example. So all these activities fall under sourcing. Okay, so this is how generally the companies identify the suppliers. Okay, so this is where the Ariba sourcing application helps. Okay, so this is where I can use the Ariba sourcing application to do the sourcing activities. I can create an RFI, I can create an RFP, I can create an auction in the Ariba sourcing application. Okay, any questions? So that's how I can use the Ariba sourcing module. So that is the initial phase in the source to pay cycle is the sourcing. So we have done the market analysis, we have found the potential suppliers, then we have identified the final suppliers, then we start negotiating with those suppliers, right? Now we have commerce automation and supply chain collaboration. Okay, so what these two solutions offer is, we can create purchase order in SAP, then it will be sent to Ariba Business Network. Okay, this is buyer. Okay, then this purchase order is transmitted to Ariba. Okay, I'll call it as SAP Business Network. So short form is Business Network, SBN. Okay, SBN stands for SAP Business Network. Okay, so this is supplier account. Okay, so the order is again transmitted from the buyer network account to the supplier account. Okay, so this is how these two solutions support sort of supply chain collaboration is direct procurement. Okay, so there are other sort of interfaces that we call interfaces that supply chain collaboration supports, which we can use for direct procurement. Okay, but again, it's not the Ariba application itself. So it is a platform that Ariba provides, the business network, where the buyers and the suppliers can communicate with each other. Okay, does that answer your question, Idris?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So as I said, so we will not be looking into these areas because we need an ERP system and we need an integrated system to look into this. Okay, and it is a vast topic as well. I mean, the others are also vast topic, but we are offering these solutions at the moment. Okay, maybe in the future, based on the requirement, we can tend to look at offering these solutions as well. Okay, but at the moment, we'll concentrate on these solutions. Okay, okay. Now, so we have completed the sourcing activity, right? We have identified the suppliers who are going to supply 100 laptops for the car manufacturing company, right? So that is using SAP Ariba sourcing solution. Okay. Now we have completed the sourcing phase of the S2P. Let's move on to contract management. So once we have identified these 3 suppliers or finalized, we have to establish a contract, right? Just contract management. Okay, so finalized 3 suppliers. Okay, now, so I cannot directly go and say, okay, hey, 3 suppliers, send me 100 laptops. It does not work like that, right? Because we are working for an organization, and an organization needs to know where exactly we are spending, how much we are spending, with whom we are spending, and what are the terms and conditions of that spend, right? Because we are answerable to a lot of people as an organization. So that's why we need contract management. So wherein we will, agree upon terms and conditions of the purchase with the suppliers. Okay. So both parties need to agree these terms and conditions. Okay, so what generally happens is they have you have identified the 3 suppliers, then we enter the negotiation part and saying we can ask for discount. uh, let's say if you procure 50 laptops in a single go, we can ask for 10% discount, right? So all these, and apart from that we can also uh, ask for the delivery time, when they are going to take the laptops. All that is going to be drafted into a contract. Okay, say TNC drafted in a contract. Okay, then we publish the contract. Okay, supplier reads, of course, so in all these phases the supplier is involved. Okay, while we are drafting the terms and conditions, everything. Okay, so we have, as an organization, generally every organization has their own terms and conditions. So they, and as a supplier as well, they have their own terms and conditions, right? They need not agree to everything what the buyer is saying because they are buying. It doesn't work like that, right? So even the supplier has their own terms and conditions, the buyer has their own terms and conditions. So contract management helps to negotiate and come to a final agreement between these two parties, the supplier and the buyer. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So supplier reads and agrees to the contract. Okay. Then supplier and buyer sign the contract. Now we have an established contract between the supplier and the buyer. Okay, to purchase 100 laptops. So we have finalized 3 suppliers, right? So there will be 3 separate contracts. It will not be a single contract for all the 3 suppliers, right? So it will be 3 separate contracts, one contract per supplier. Okay. Okay. So contract is a legal document. Okay, it is a legal document. Okay, between the buyer and the supplier. Okay, which establishes the terms and conditions of the purchase. Okay, so that is nothing but contract. So we use the Ariba, or we can use SAP Ariba contracts for this purpose, to establish a legal document between the buyer and the supplier. Okay, so that is where the contracts module comes into picture. Okay, so that is what is contract management. Okay, so we have identified the suppliers in the sourcing module. We have established the contract using the contract module of Ariba. We have completed the contract management of source to pay cycle. The next module is, or the next phase is ordering. Okay, so now we have identified the suppliers and we have established the contract as well. We know the price at which each of these 3 suppliers is going to supply the laptops for the buying organization or the car manufacturing company. Okay. Okay. Now, so we have the contract, we have the suppliers. So now we can place the orders. Okay, ordering, ordering. So how ordering begins is with a requisition or a purchase requisition. It starts with the purchase requisition. Okay, so now a user or a person who is responsible to buy laptops from the suppliers creates a purchase requisition document in the Ariba application or in any procurement application. Okay, let's say a purchase requisition document is created. Okay, what does this purchase requisition document contain? Okay, it contains the price, the quantity, the delivery date, the delivery address, okay, and some other data. Okay, but these are the main elements of purchase requisition. Okay, so we'll have the price, the quantity, the delivery date, the delivery address. Okay, now a user in the organization, okay, let's say a procuring user. Okay, so every organization has its departments, right? So there will be a procurement department, there will be an IT department, there will be a legal department, there will be a sales department. Okay, so procurement department is responsible for procuring the items that are required for the organization. Okay, so let's say I'll say user A. Okay, user, purchasing user, creates a, I'll call it as PR. Okay, purchase requisition. Okay, PR. Okay, now let's say the price is $100. Okay, $100, and the quantity is 10. Okay, the delivery date is, let's say, on the 2nd of Jan 25. Okay, and the delivery address is Visualpath, Hyderabad. Okay, so with this document, with this information, a purchase requisition is created. Now any organization, okay, which does its procurement, wants to understand where the spend is going. Okay, who has created that requisition, who, okay, so once we create the requisition, what happens is it goes through approval. Okay, now when we are buying for our home, okay, for example, you want to purchase a laptop, right? You are a student, you want to purchase a laptop. Now who is the fund manager in your home? Usually it will be your mother or your father, right? So you need to get an approval from your father or your mother before you can purchase anything for yourself, right? So similarly, anything that is being purchased or procured in an organization, it will go through approval. Okay, so there will be designated users who review the information that is there on this purchase requisition. Okay, and approve the purchase requisition. Okay, understood? Simple, it's just not complicated. Okay, so as I said, as an example, okay, you want to purchase a laptop, it should go through approval of your mother or father, right? Before you can purchase anything for your home. So similarly, anything which is purchased in an organization should go through designated approvers. So they will review and make sure that everything is intact on that purchase requisition document. Once it is approved, okay, then a purchase order is generated. Okay, once the PR is approved, a purchase order is generated. Okay, PO is generated. Now, when you are creating an order on an Amazon or Flipkart or any e-commerce site, once you place the order, you will get the order number, correct? So, similarly, even in the any procurement application, once you create the purchase equation, once everyone in the approval flow approves it, a PO is generated, a purchase order is generated. Okay, that PO is transmitted to the supplier. Okay, okay. So we have the supplier information as well on this purchase equation. My bad, I forgot to include that. So purchase information, supplier information is also included on this purchase requisition document. Okay. So I have identified three suppliers, right? So I can buy the laptop from any of these three suppliers, correct? So I'll create a purchase requisition with price, quantity, the delivery date, the delivery address, supplier. Okay. Now, once it is approved, a purchase order is generated and the PO is transmitted to this supplier. Okay. When the PO is transmitted to the supplier, supplier checks their inventory, generally checks the inventory. So they maintain the stock of laptops, right? The suppliers maintain the stock of laptops, and when the PO is sent to them from the buyer, they check their inventory. So let's say so we have created 10, the purchase equation for 10, correct? 10 laptops. The supplier checks their inventory and sends ASM, okay? Or they can even send order confirmation, okay? Supplier sends an order confirmation saying that, okay, we have received your order for 10 laptops. I confirm that I will be shipping these 10 laptops to you. Okay. The supplier has agreed to your order and has confirmed that I will be shipping those 10 laptops to you at that delivery address. Okay. So the supplier sends order confirmation. Okay. Now the buyer is informed that, okay, supplier has seen the order and has also confirmed my order. Okay. Next step is ASN. Okay, or advance shipment notice. Okay, the supplier sends advance shipment notice that, hey, I am sending these 10 laptops on this particular day to your delivery address. Okay, now the supplier buyer receives this advance shipment notice and gets ready for the delivery of the laptops based on the advance shipment notice. Okay, once ASN is sent, the supplier ships the goods. In our case, it is the laptops. Okay. So now the buyer receives the goods, laptops. Okay. So the supplier has shipped the laptops. The buyer will receive the laptops, right? Okay. Any questions? So we have placed the requisition. We have given the price, the quantity, the delivery date, the uh, supplier information all on the requisition. Then it goes through approval. The approver reviews the document and approves the document. Then purchase order is generated. PO is transmitted to the supplier. Supplier checks the PO document, checks their inventory, sends an order confirmation, then sends an advance shipment notice. Based on the ASN, buyer gets ready to receive the laptops. Supplier, let's say supplier here, supplier ships the goods. Okay, buyer receives the goods. Okay, any questions in these steps? Simple, right? Similar to whatever you do on Amazon, Flipkart, or any e-commerce site. You place an order for a laptop, let's say on Flipkart, a PO is generated. Okay, that PO is sent to the supplier. Then you get a notification on your mobile that, hey, on this day you will be receiving your goods, right? Then you will get ready for the laptop which is going to be delivered on a particular day. The courier guy comes and delivers the laptops, right? Then you usually do a cash on delivery, or you can make a payment upfront. But mostly in these cases, in buying for any organization, the payment happens after the delivery of the goods. Okay, after the delivery of the goods. Now, once the buyer receives the goods, the supplier sends the invoice. Okay, invoice contains how much payment and for what is the quantity, everything, what is there on the PO. So just to let you know, okay, so once the PR is approved, all this information which is there on the PR is also automatically transmitted or sent or defaulted on the purchase order. Okay, whatever information is there on purchase requisition, the same thing is copied onto the purchase order, and that with that information the PO is transmitted to the supplier. Okay, all these details will also be there on the PO as well. Okay, now the ASN comes in, the supplier ships the goods, buyer receives the goods, then supplier sends the invoice. So when the invoice comes in, what generally the organizations do is they do a invoice reconciliation. Okay, what is invoice reconciliation? So when the invoice comes in, they will not pay the supplier blindly, right? They will check what is the information that is present on this invoice. Okay, so they will, invoice reconciliation is nothing but matching the invoice with the PO and the goods receipt. Goods receipt is nothing but the buyer receiving the goods. Okay, now this is very important. Okay, now we should not blindly pay the supplier based on this invoice. The supplier can sometimes send or enter the price which is more than what is agreed on the contract or what is there on the purchase order. So that's why it is very important that we do an invoice reconciliation, where we are checking the invoice and trying to match the information that is there on the invoice with the PO and the goods receipt. Okay, so let's say while we have placed the order for 10 laptops, but the supplier does not have 10 laptops initially. Okay, he only sends the advance shipment notice for, let's say, 5 laptops. Okay, 5 laptops, that is also possible, right? Because the supplier does not have the stock, he will only send 5 laptops. Okay, now while receiving the goods, I will only receive 5 laptops, not 10 laptops. Okay, so but when the, let's say, the supplier sends the invoice for 10 laptops, now in this case there is a mismatch, right? The supplier is sending invoice for 10 laptops but has shipped only 5 laptops. Correct? Understood? So why we need invoice reconciliation? Yeah, yeah. So that's why it's very important that we do invoice reconciliation before we make any payment. We should check the PO document, the invoice document, and the goods receipt, and ensure that all three match with each other. Only then make the payment. Okay. If there is any discrepancy or is any difference on the invoice the supplier sends, we can reject this invoice and send to the supplier and say, hey, we have received only 5 laptops, you are sending the invoice for 10 laptops, kindly correct your invoice. Okay, now after invoice reconciliation, finally the payment. Okay, buyer makes the payment for the 10 laptops. Okay, now we have created the purchase requisition. It has created, once it is approved, the PO is created with all the information that is there on the purchase requisition. The PO is transmitted to the supplier. Then supplier checks the inventory, sends an order confirmation, then sends an advance shipment notice. Then the supplier ships the goods. The buyer receives the goods. Supplier sends the invoice. Then buyer reconciliates the invoice. After matching, making sure everything is fine with the invoice, they make the payment to the supplier. Okay, so this happens using all these steps under ordering, is that okay? Ordering and payment. I will include payment here because we have talked about payment. Okay. Now you see we have completed ordering as well as payment. So this is or these are all the different phases of source to pay cycle. We start with sourcing, we then move on to contract management, ordering, payment. In sourcing, we identify the suppliers, finalize the suppliers. In contract management, we establish the terms and conditions of the purchase for the 100 laptops. Okay, it's a legal document that is created between the buyer and the supplier using contract management. Then I create a purchase requisition. An order is generated. Once the PR is approved, the order is sent to the supplier. All this comes under ordering. Okay. Once the supplier sends the goods, I receive the goods. Okay. Then finally, based on the invoice, I do a reconciliation of the invoice and I make the payment. Okay. So all these phases contribute to the source to pay cycle. Okay. Now, so we use Ariba sourcing to identify the suppliers. We use Ariba contracts for establishing the contract or the terms and conditions between the buyer and the supplier. Then I use Ariba buying and invoicing to create purchase requisition, to handle the invoice, to handle the invoicing reconciliation, to receive the goods. All this is done under or using SAP buying and invoicing application. Okay, buying and invoicing. We can use SAP Ariba buying as well, where we do not, um, talk about invoicing here. Okay, it's just till the goods receipt part, till the receiving of the goods is taken care in SAP buying module, whereas even invoicing is taken care in SAP Ariba buying and invoicing. Okay, these are two separate modules. This is called as P2O. Okay, procure to order. Okay, now this one is called as P2P, which is procure to pay. Okay, so this is how we can use these solutions which are offered by Ariba in the different phases of source to pay. Okay, any questions?
For all this, we have any mapping?
I'm sorry.
Mapping type is there
I'm
for
sorry.
invoice.
I cannot hear you. Your voice is very low. If you're on
For,
speaker, can you please turn off the speaker?
for all this, we have any mapping for invoicing or
Mapping.
yeah.
When you say mapping, mapping to the ERP system.
Yes, or you need to do any mapping. Like,
Okay, so that part comes under integration. Okay, so yes, we need to do a mapping, but Ariba provides something called as cloud integration gateway, which takes care of all the mapping between the ERP system and the Ariba system. Okay, so that part comes under integration. Okay, so that's a advanced topic, I would say. So uh, we will cover that aspect in the coming sessions. Okay, so in this session, I just wanted to cover the basic aspects of procurement. What are the different solutions, and understand the different phases of source to pay. So this will, this will, give us a very good stepping stone for the coming sessions. Okay, so that everyone is on the same page. Okay, yes, we have to do the mapping. As I said, that comes under integration. Okay, I'll explain those topics in the coming session. Okay. Okay, I think we can wrap it off.